Welcome, everyone. My name is Becky Robinson. I'm so thrilled that you are choosing to invest an hour of your time today to learn with two of the greatest leadership experts ever. We will be getting started in just a few moments, but as you're coming in, we hope that you'll take a moment. We hope you'll find the chat. So throughout today's event, the chat will be an amazing place for you to connect in community with the others who are attending this event. It will be a chance for you to ask your questions, leave your comments, all of these things. So we hope you'll find the chat, say hello. When you do that, I hope you'll use the drop-down menu, please, to select everyone so that everyone who's on the call can see your comments. And again, we will be taking some of your questions for Bill and for Ken later. And I can see, we have an international audience. I see Canada as one international location. Your chats are coming in so fast that I can barely keep up. I see Germany. I always like to call out those international folks. Of course, we love our folks in the United States from across the country, but it's exciting for us to see those international attendees. It looks like we've got someone in Colombia. I do have David in Florida who's prepping for a hurricane. So thank you for coming in despite the hurricane. We have someone in Brazil, someone in the south of Brazil. We've got someone in Scotland in the UK. As I scroll through, it looks like we have someone from nearly every single state in the Union, Glasgow, UK. I see some folks in Michigan, go blue. Always have to say hello to my fellow Michiganders. Both Bill and Ken today are calling in from the Ken Blanchard Company's headquarters in beautiful sunny San Diego. And I'm going to give them a chance to say hello soon. So thank you so much for being with us. So as we get started today, one of the things I want to do is take a moment to introduce you to Bill Treasure and to Ken Blanchard. And they may not need an introduction. I know many of you have participated in the past in webinars with both Ken and Bill, but for fun, let's tell you a bit more about Bill first. So Bill is a good friend of mine. I've worked with him multiple times over the years, launching various books, including A Leadership Kick in the Ass, Leaders Open Doors, and I think those are the main ones we launched together, but Bill has also written The Leadership Killer with a co-author and Courage Goes to Work, one of his early books. You may know Bill as the Chief Encouragement Officer at his company, Giant Leap Consulting. And incidentally, Bill is celebrating 20 years of his business at Giant Leap Consulting. Giant Leap is a firm that specializes in leadership development, strategic planning, and team building. And Bill is a very sought after leadership speaker and trainer. He's also a dad to 3 amazing kids and a husband to an amazing wife. And I'm thrilled always for the opportunities that I have to learn with you, Bill. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you so much, Becky. I appreciate the gracious introduction.
Sure. And just a moment about our extra special guest, Ken Blanchard. Ken is also a friend who I've had the chance to meet and work with over the years, and I'm always thrilled when I get to be with Ken. He's the co-founder and chief spiritual officer of the Ken Blanchard Companies. And this guy has authored more than 60 books with multiple different co-authors, and his books have been translated into 42 languages, and over 21 million copies of Ken's books have sold around the world. So chances are, if you've read a leadership book, you've read one of Ken's, or maybe even many of Ken's. My personal claim to fame is sharing a limo ride with Ken to the airport several years ago when we were working on the launch of the new 1 Minute Manager. So it's always amazing to be with Ken. And I believe, Bill, that you have some comments about Ken before we dive into the content today.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you to everybody who came to today's event. Thank you so much for being here. It shows me that you're genuinely interested in leadership. And if you are, you're interested in helping people become better in their influence. Nobody in the world has done that as much as Ken Blanchard. In my mind, he is the leading leadership expert in the entire world and has been so for many years. And on top of that, he is as humble and accessible a person as you'll ever meet. I've been to multiple events where there are long lines of people just waiting to spend a moment with Ken while he signs their book or spends a gracious moment with them. I can't think of anybody who better represents what it means to be a leader than an actual leader like Ken Blanchard. And Ken, I'm so, so grateful for you to be able to be here today to share your wisdom with this audience, as you so often do. But thank you from the bottom of my heart, Ken. It means a tremendous amount to me.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's great to be with you. And I'm going to share what you said with my wife, Margie, so she gets to realize what she got.
Well, we could just say those things about Margie too, because as you know, she's quite a leader in her own right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So before we dive into what's going to be an amazing conversation, Bill, I know that you have a couple books with you there. Would you hold those up for us? So this is the week that Bill is bringing his latest book into the world, Leadership 2 Words at a Time. If you can see the subtitle, it says Simple Truths for Leading Complicated People. And this is Ken's most recent book, Simple Truths of Leadership. They both have that word simple. And I know that, and the word truth, I know that sometimes leadership feels anything but simple. And both of you have dedicated your careers to developing leaders. So as we get started today, I was hoping that you could share with us a little bit about what drew you each to the study of leadership as a topic.
That's great. Ken, maybe why don't you go ahead and go first on that question? What is it that drew you to leadership?
Well, I have to say my father, he was an amazing guy. He grew up at West Point. His father was a doctor there, and he wanted to go there when he got out of high school. And his father said, "No, son, I think you should go away to school." So he said, "I think I'll go to Annapolis." And he graduated from the Naval Academy in 24, but they didn't need naval officers in 24. And so they dismissed him after the senior cruise. And in January 25, he went to Harvard Business School, majored in finance, went down onto Wall Street and began his career. About to be made a vice president of National City Bank. He came home in 1940. I was 1 year old and said to my mother, "Well, I quit today." She said, "To do what?" He said, "I rejoined the Navy." She said, "You got to be kidding me." He said, "Didn't I tell you when we got married, the country ever got in trouble? I felt I owed it something. Hitler's crazy and the Japanese will be in this soon." And so he did that. He was just amazing. And I happened to win the president of the 7th grade in New Rochelle, New York, in my junior high school. And I came home all pumped up, and my dad said, "Well, Ken, this is the beginning of your leadership training program. Now that you're president, don't ever use your position. Great leaders are great because people trust and respect them, not because they have power." He said it's a myth in the military that it's always my way or the highway. He said, "Sure, in battle, somebody's got to call the shots. But if you act like you're a big deal with your men and not in the battle, they will shoot you before the enemy." So that was the beginning of my leadership training.
That's a great story. It's so insightful. My own story, I grew up not far from Ken. I grew up in Larchmont, New York, just the next town over. And some of you know my backstory. I also used to be a member of the U.S. high diving team, diving from heights that scaled to over 100 feet, traveling at speeds in excess of 50 miles an hour into a small pool that was only 10 feet deep. And in that time, I got put in a leadership role. I became the captain of the team, and I was only 24 at the time. And I had no real pattern of experience. I didn't have that great leadership role model in front of me. And so I defaulted to really my father coming out of me. And my dad was a great guy, but he had a quick temper. And that's how I operated as a leader. And one of the divers one day after a show in front of 2,000 people, I lit into the team and gave them harsh treatment because of what I thought was a subpar performance. And he came back to me, this diver backstage out of earshot of everybody else, and said, "Hey, treasurer, if you talk to us like that again, I'll walk. I don't need this job to be treated that poorly by anybody." And I thought about it that night, and I realized he was right. I had no idea who I was as a leader. And so I went looking for books on leadership and management, and I came across a book called The 1 Minute Manager. And I was like, wow, you mean I don't have to be heavy-handed and dictatorial as a leader, and I can actually get people to respond? And so I started, trying these leadership practices, and I got a little bit better as a leader. But more importantly, I got enamored with the topic of leadership. And I found myself not just getting better in my own performance, but I enjoyed this topic of leadership. I decided to put myself through graduate school. And then I came across Ken Blanchard's material in graduate school. I came across the situational leadership model and the life cycle of leadership. And it had a big impact on me. And what I found, Becky, is that as more I got interested in leadership, it made me a better person to aspire to be the leader in me. It sort of helped close the gap between the person I should be and the person I am. And that's what I think is so wonderful about leadership, is it sort of helps us strive to be better because of the impact that we can have on others. So my backstory really starts with the courage of a diver who looked me in the face and said, dude, you're not being a very good leader. And then I started to go on a path to figure out how to become a better leader. And I saw what a redeeming sort of search and journey that is. And so, you know, I owe a lot of it to Ken, right? And his book inspiring me to do that.
Amazing. So the Ken Blanchard Company was founded in 1979 and is an international company dedicated to driving human worth and effectiveness in the workplace. So Ken, we're curious, what has leading your own company over the years taught you about leadership that only actually leading people could have taught you?
Well, it's interesting. I started the company with my wife, Margie, and she was the president because she would be much better at that. I'm the chief spiritual officer, but Margie was the one that said, Ken, so many people who speak on leadership, they don't have to lead, you know, they just talk about it. And she said, I think we ought to start our own organization so we would be forced to practice what we preach, and we also can learn and have a laboratory. And so that's really why we started the company, to do that. And it's now, you know, over 40 years old. And our son Scott is the president, and our daughter Debbie is running the marketing department. And Margie's brother Tom, who was born when she was a freshman at Cornell, he's our CEO. And so it's still a family-run company. And Margie and I are the head cheerleaders now.
And Becky, I'm going to jump in there. And, you know, I don't know if the listeners realize how big the Ken Blanchard Company's is. I came here to the campus for my first time today, and there's at least 3 buildings, right, with Ken's name on it. He's in 20 different countries with his materials and such. They just had a conference in Athens, Greece, and 100 providers of the Ken Blanchard Company's products and such got together. So when we say that he's leading an organization, it's not some small consulting firm. It's quite a big operation. And it's a testament to Ken that he's been able to sort of live the values and ideas that he espouses.
Yeah,
well, it's been kind of a fun journey, Becky, as you can imagine. And having Margie as my partner has made quite a difference. You know, when Margie speaks, everybody listens. And when I speak, they laugh. But it's been really kind of fun. And then to see our kids and Margie's brother take over the leadership has really been terrific. So, but less than 5 companies that start ever last over 40 years. And, you know, we're now, you know, over 40 years in the business.
You know, what strikes me about that is, you know, you heard my story. I read one book in the journey of my career, right? And then it set me on to a bunch of other books. And I continue to read Ken's books, right? Here, I've got his book right here, right? But think of that being in all the countries that he's in and with the operations that he has. And how many people today? We have over 1,200 people who registered for today's event. Think of the lives that he has bettered and the impact, the positive influence that he's had on leadership to make people more humane in their treatment of others. I just think it's a profound thing.
It is indeed.
It's been kind of exciting to see that, because what Margie and I realized is that the key to effective leadership is to have a philosophy. It's we, not me. And so many leaders, they think that all the brains are in their office and everybody should suck up the hierarchy. And we've been much more into kind of a servant leadership philosophy, which has 2 parts. One is vision, direction, values, and goals. I mean, you need to have people understand where you're going, and you can involve them in that. And that comes from the hierarchy. And that's the leadership part of servant leadership. And once that's clear, now you go to the servant part of servant leadership, and you turn the pyramid upside down, and now you work for your people. Your job is to help them win, help them accomplish their goals. And it's not about you, it's about we.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for bringing up that important two-word phrase of servant leadership. And that is one of the most important two-word phrases on leadership of all time, servant leadership. And Bill, like Ken, you've written a lot about the importance of humility as a leadership attribute and the danger of leading with the big ego. And so let's talk a little bit more about the concept that you share in the book, Leadership 2 Words at a Time, and the important chapter that you have, Practice Humility. How can leaders do that more effectively? How can we live into the value that Ken has mentioned, which is about we, not me?
Yeah, so thank you. As you know, Becky, and Ken knows as well, I wrote a book with a Navy SEAL, Captain John Coach Havlicka, and I wrote a book called The Leadership Killer: Reclaiming Humility in an Age of Arrogance. And one of the greatest compliments I ever received on any of my books is that Ken said, that book doesn't leave the reader anywhere to hide. Because it's a book that really provokes accountability and self-consciousness in a good way. I think that, leaders need to practice humility. The first thing that it comes to mind is, first of all, know who you are. Know what your sunshine and shadows are. Know what your gifts are, your natural talents, but know the overuse of those gifts and how they will sometimes get in the way. Your ego will be your biggest impediment to success with others. And practicing humility first means to listen to the people that you work with and that you're privileged to be in a leadership role with. That word listen, if you rearrange the letters, spells silent. And part of it is just learning to be quiet while your people are sharing with you ideas. John Havlick taught me of the concept, and this will resonate with Ken's dad being an admiral, is that, a lot of times when you're up there on the bridge, that's where the rarefied air is. But you got to get down, and what Captain Havlick said is walk the deck plates. You got to get on the deck plates where the work is actually happening and do a lot of listening, because those people are going to keep you safe. Those people can see things that you can't see and that you'll need to see. And you have to create a psychologically safe environment where people can give you the feedback that you'll need to make good decisions on their behalf. So listening becomes really critical. The other piece of humility is remembering where you came from and never losing sight of your root system, because people are going to treat you special. And you have to learn how to be disciplined around not liking that special treatment so much that you start to think you are special in a leadership role. So you've got to resist that temptation and never lose sight of your roots, that you came from the non-leader ranks before you came in a leadership role. So those are a couple of things that I would say is listen, walk the deck plates, and don't forget your roots.
Bill, I think you're really on to something when you're talking about the human ego, because that is the biggest destructor of effective leadership. And we started a 12-step Egos Anonymous program because I think it's the biggest addiction in the world. And there's two ways that ego shows up. One is false pride, when you have a more than philosophy. You think you're brighter than, you're smarter than, and all. And the other is fear or self-doubt, where you have a less than. And a lot of people say, that's an ego problem. Sure, you're focused on yourself. And I think it's what you're saying is that the antidote for false pride is humility. And a lot of people think humility is a weakness. And yet I think it was C.S. Lewis gets the biggest credit. He said people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less. And I think that is just such a powerful thing. And the key to fear and self-doubt is to realize that God didn't make any junk. As my mother said, there's a pearl of goodness in every single person. So look for that pearl. And,
in one of my books that I talk about pigheads and weaklings. Pigheads are those egotistical, dominant, always have to get their way, my way or the highway, super controlling, right? And that's a leader you don't want to be. But the other leader you don't want to be is a weakling. You don't want to be have no resolve, no backbone, and be wishy-washy and flip-flop all the time. We need leaders who are confident. We want confidence in a leader. We want confidence in their direction. In fact, if you lose the confidence of your command, you will lose your leadership, right? So we want confidence, but we want that confidence anchored to humility in the way that Ken was just talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk for a minute about this book, Simple Truths of Leadership. That's your latest book, Ken, with Randy Connolly. And in that book, you notice that, you know, common sense isn't always common practice. So there's another couple of 2-word phrases. Why is that the case? Why aren't we able to live into common sense in our leadership?
I think that gets back to what we were just talking about, the human ego. Because you still think that since I'm the leader, somehow I got to show these people I really know what I'm doing, and all, and I need them to be sucking up the hierarchy and all that, rather than saying, boy, common sense is, people don't work for me, they work with me. And I'm only as good as my relationship to my people. And that's all common sense stuff that we need to keep on doing and get our egos out of the way, so we don't start acting like we're better than people, because people just don't do that. They don't mind, you calling some shots when it's necessary, but they also want to make sure. And what's one of the interesting things, Becky, and I think you'll resonate with this, Bill, is that we used to think a lot more of top-down leadership, and the young people today, they really are interested in side-by-side leadership. I mean, they don't want your position, but they want to be a part of the leadership story.
Yeah, there's a good thing that, in some of my classes, we'll show a clip. It's a YouTube clip of Ken. And he says something, he says it about 5 minutes, but there's a single thing that he says that I'll ask people afterwards, and we have a good juicy discussion around it. And he says, when you're in a leadership role, he says, I don't work, he says, you don't work for me. I work for you. And we plumb that discussion because it's such a head change for many people, right? They think that these people work for me and they have to bring me the deliverables and they're going to be making me successful. And well, that last part is true, but really your job is to help them be successful as a leader. So you work for them, which really flips its head on leadership, and hence the idea of servant leadership.
Yeah. That's so powerful. It's simple. That's common sense practiced.
So let's get a little bit deeper. One of the things that both of you have written about across your careers, and Bill, something that you've jumped right into with the new book, is the idea of the importance of having a spiritual center. So could we talk a little bit about that, and why is having a spiritual center so essential when you're in a leadership role? And if you're a leader who hasn't yet developed that, what guidance would you have for leaders who want to tap into the spiritual side?
So I think that, when you're in a leadership role, you have the impact, you have the ability to impact people in ways that you may not fully appreciate. And you may impact a person for the trajectory of their entire career. And you might be the intercessor that meets that person at a moment in time where you actually impact their life for the better or worse, right? So you have to be conscious of your choice. And I think that having a spiritual center purifies your motives when you're in a leadership role. It helps get your ego out of the way so that, in fact, you are able to think of others, so that when you have that impact, you're basically polishing your conscience on a daily basis so that you're operating not out of ego, but out of the best interests of the company and the people that you are privileged to lead. And that to me becomes extra important. Ken said one time, he asked a simple question. I think it's really such a simple but important question. How do you start your day? How do you start your day? So many people, and myself, it used to be this way too. I'd jump in the car, turn on the shock jock or some political discourse of the angertainment, and that anger gets in my head. And then I go into the office and I'm radiating all this stuff and tension. I'm wolfing down a breakfast burrito on the way to work. And instead, and actually, I have to say that the pandemic experience helped me with this. It got me back to my spiritual root system of reading daily spiritual literature, something in the morning, a simple paragraph. But by the way, the first thing I do, because of that, how do you start your day question that Ken asked, now I start the day with what I call grounding and centeredness. I start the day with silence. I first start the day, I put my feet on the ground and I register what's going on with my senses. What is the temperature that I feel? What do I hear outside? Do I hear a dog barking? Do I hear the wind blowing? There are these two little twin girls up the street, and I hear them say goodbye to their father every morning. Bye, Daddy, as he tries to work. We love you. We love you. What a joyous way to start the day, right? Then I read a little spiritual literature. I reflect on how does that impact me? And I think of the words that Benjamin Franklin started his every day with. What good shall I do in the world today? What good shall I do in the world today? When you're in a leadership role, you have a huge ability to do some good in people's lives and in the organization. And then at the end of the day, Benjamin Franklin would bookend it by also asking, what good have I done in the world today? So I think that having a spiritual center, getting center, so that when you're dealing with the whirlwind of everything else that causes anger and irritation around you, you will at least have centeredness as you are meeting your day one day at a time.
I think that's really important, Bill. I've often said we have two selves. We have the external task-oriented self that you talked about, where you leap out of bed into your task or and you're eating while you're trying to get dressed and you're in your car and all. But the other is the thoughtful, reflective self. And what you're saying is that you now are waking that up first. And I think that's really an important part of you is to wake that self. And that's the spiritual self, and we're not talking about religion. We're just talking about getting out of your own way and realizing that there's a power in the world that's more powerful than you and more loving than you. And how can you tap into that in a way that really makes a difference? And so how do you enter your day slowly? And then I agree with you, is at the end of the day, I like to write praisings, what did I do today that I really feel good about? And then redirections. What did I do today? I wish I had a little instant replay that I could redo. And because, who was it said, Plato or one of them said, an unexamined life is not worth living. I forget who said that.
It might have been Emerson, yeah.
Yeah, but it's really a powerful thing, and but you can't do that unless you in the morning wake up your thoughtful, reflective self and think about who you want to be today and what you're facing and all that kind of thing, rather than charging into your task-oriented self.
Yeah, and I credit Ken Blanchard for my ability to write that chapter in the book. I'd always shied away from it, and yet it's a part of me, and it's an important part of who I am. And I know it's an important part for leaders to be able to recognize that part of themselves and for the people that they lead. If nothing else, we all recognize body, mind, and spirit, right? And we think about having physical fitness and mental fitness, but we need spiritual fitness too, particularly if we're going to be in a role where we're impacting other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's some really powerful conversation happening in the chat, and don't worry, we're going to share the chat with Bill and Ken later so that they can read and reflect over the things that you've shared. But thank you to everyone. Anthony's letting us know it's Socrates that said that an unexamined life is not worth living.
Thank you, Anthony. Yes.
So thank you for that. Before we go any further, we do have a lot of questions that are coming in the chat, and we do want to make sure that we get to as many of those as possible. But before we go any further, I just want to take a brief moment to talk about some special offers that we have for you if you are participating on today's event. And this is really important because you have a chance to learn further from Bill and from Ken. So I'm going to just take a quick moment, and that was not as smooth as I wanted, but I'm going to take a quick moment to let you know about some special offers we have for you because you're on today's call. As I mentioned earlier, Bill's new book, Leadership 2 Words at a Time, launches tomorrow, is available tomorrow. Today, you can pre-order it. And if you pre-order the book today, we are going to give you a chance to win one of three things. One thing that you might be able to do is to get an advanced audiobook version or a free audiobook version. So buy the print, you can get a free audiobook. Buy the print, you can get a free Kindle book. We have some free codes that we're going to be sending out to the first, I think, 50 people who order Bill's book today. So if you'd like to get the book and have it in print and then also have it in a digital format, either audio or ebook, we would love for you to fill out the form. please pre-order the book. We're not going to require you to prove it to us. We're going to believe that you did it. But when you pre-order Bill's book today, then we'll be following up to get you that audiobook or ebook code if you're among the first 50. We also have 10 print copies of Simple Truths of Leadership available today. And for 10 of you, we're going to randomly draw from those who pre-order Bill's book. We're going to get you a print copy of Simple Truths of Leadership. Again, I have 10 of those that we're going to ship out. A couple of other things that you can do. One is starting tomorrow, you'll be able to leave a review on Amazon if you've already read Bill's book. And we would greatly appreciate that if you've already gotten the book and read the book, that you would leave a review soon. And we're going to give you some ways also to stay in touch with Bill. But I'm going to add one more. You know, this concept of leadership in 2 words is so powerful to me personally. And I want to invite any of you who are on the call to go ahead and figure out what your 2 words are. On Friday, I sent out my newsletter. I picked the words love freely. The 2 words that were showing up for me after being with my team last week are, I want to be a leader who's going to love freely. And if you could take a picture of yourself, maybe write your 2 leadership words on a piece of paper. I know my friend Dick Gorley's on the call. He said his words are serve intentionally. Just write them on a piece of paper, take a selfie, and out on social media tomorrow, talk about Bill's book, give a link to Bill's book, and show your 2 leadership words. So that's just a really powerful concept. I see people putting in the chat, ordering. Thank you. By you pre-ordering the book, you help us expand the momentum for this title. You help us share these amazing leadership words through Bill's book and Ken's book with the world. So thank you to those who are choosing to order the book. Now we're going to get to your questions. So thank you for that little commercial moment. Please know that the reason we talk about the ways that you can share the book is because these ideas matter and we want to get them out to as many people as we can. This is not at all about, I mean, it's a little bit about selling books, but the path to selling books makes sure that this message goes out further. So thank you to those of you who are ordering. There's a link in the chat that you can let us know that you ordered, and then we'll get those prizes out to you. 10 of you will get a copy of Simple Truths of Leadership in print to your house. And then the first 50 of you who order will get a choice between the ebook and the audiobook. Okay, so questions that have come in. Let's dive into these. Patricia's wanting you, Ken, to share your definition of servant leadership and behaviors that you expect to see evident when a leader is practicing servant leadership.
Well, to me, the definition of servant leadership is that it's about we, not me. I've already mentioned that, and you're supposed to be there for your people. You know, you're working for them. You know, Bob Greenleaf, who kind of was a modern day starter of servant leadership, said, you know, great leaders serve first, you know, and go out there for people. And the big question is, what can you do to help your people win? You know, and that's where, you know, even gets back into the 1-minute manager. They need to know what their goals are, you know, and once the goals are clear, then you need to wander around and see if you can catch them doing something right and cheer them on. And if they're not doing as well as they should in a particular area, say, how can I help? You know, because you're there for them. So it's a servant leadership is about serving, not being served.
That's helpful. So here's a follow-up, Bill. Maybe you can take this one. What strategies do you use to lead in an environment of great complexity and uncertainty, where command type and decisiveness is critical while still maintaining that humility and servant leadership?
Wow, that's a good question and a challenging question because there are situations, as Ken would know, right? The idea of situational leadership, that there are times that for example, in emergency situations, or as this person flags, in a highly complex situation, particularly if you're leading newer type people that are still early on in their career, they need more direction and they need more structure from you. And that structure does not have to be heavy-handed. It means clearly defining what the goals are, involving those people and shaping how the execution towards those goals will get done. And then you have to do what here's 2 words that I included in the book, actually. You know, so there's expectations. You've got to clarify the expectations. Think of the word expect, but you can't just leave it there. you also have to inspect, means that you have to periodically get together and review the work together and make sure that it's tracking in the right direction. And sometimes you have to course correct. You have to also provide training to people and equip them. They may be willing to do the work, but they may not be able to do the work. So you've got to equip them with the training and the skills and the tools that will help marshal them towards those clear expectations that you all have made together. Because, and then you're gonna have to spend time mentoring them and your own development time with them. The thing is, and the thing about the book, Leadership 2 Words at a Time, is that leadership can be a heavy burden if we wear it like a burden. And if we just take the next right thing in front of us and do those next right things, those things they don't have to be complex. We can be leading complexity, but we can simplify the things that we have to do with the next right thing in front of us, such as 2-word concepts that I talk about in the book. But, I think the bigger thing is resist the temptation, because it's complex, to necessarily drop into old style leadership. Because I think a critical question that every leader needs to ask themselves is, do you want to lead or do you want to rule? Rulership is the oldest form of leadership that there is, and it is that heavy-handed, over-controlling, dominated my way or the highway. And you can still be a leader and lead complex situations. In fact, I kind of think that you have to be.
Thank you, Bill. So here's a chance to give some encouragement to someone in a new leadership position. Laura says, I'm in an organization that's entirely new to me, in a new leadership position, would love some advice on how to navigate when everything is new and I'm managing the I don't know yet factor.
Well, my father used to say, when in doubt, confront, and when all else fails, try honesty. And if you meet with your group and you say, as you all know, I've been appointed as the manager of this group, but I want to tell you, I don't have all the answers. In fact, I got more questions than answers. And I want this to be a we operation, not me, and work together and just be right out front with them, that you don't have it all together, that we're going to figure it out together.
What I would add is I one time had a young CEO. He was like 40 years old, leading a $500 million company. And he was getting a lot of input from other people, the board of directors, from his father, the previous CEO, on how he should lead. And in a coaching session with me, he said, Bill, I'm getting all this advice, and I know it's well-intentioned and such, but it's too much. It's like, where do I start? Where do I start? And almost instinctively, and this is my advice to this person, start by being a good human. Start by being a good person, meaning get back to your value system, identify what your own core values are, and lead from that place. And then absolutely, meet with and honesty, I hope, is one of the core values. Meet with your team, let them know that this is the first time that you've been in a leadership role in this way, and that you're looking forward to the opportunity to lead them, and you want to be a good leader for them, and that you're going to be figuring things out along the way, that you don't have all of the answers. But start by being a good person and identifying your own core values that you want to bring to bear.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So Laura, hopefully this is some encouragement for you that you need just in time on your journey. So Camille is responding to Barry and agreeing that flatter structures, as far as hierarchy goes, are better for servant leadership. But so many of our organizations still have current formal structures that are hierarchical. So the question is, how do we work within those hierarchical structures while trying to flatten and live into servant leadership?
Well, I think one of the things that you need to do is practice what you preach with your own group. And if you practice that and you get good performance, people are going to start to pay attention and say, tell us how you're getting this kind of performance. And you can start to share with them. You just don't charge up the hierarchy and start pointing your fingers. You need to model it first. And then as they see what you're doing, then you'd say, let me share what it's doing, and then we can talk about how this might work as we move up the hierarchy.
Yeah, I've got, nothing to add. I think that's a good answer. Yeah.
All right. So to the topic of the spiritual center and values, Liz is curious, what are the similarities and differences between a leader having a spiritual center or a leader getting clear about their values?
I think they go together, because you can't have a spiritual center if you don't have a set of values. And so I think that you want to think about what is the big picture. What do I stand for? What do I believe is true, and what are my values? And then once I can be clear on that, I can share with my people and say, how does this fit in with your values? Because I want to hear from you, because my values don't have to be your values, but let's see how we can work together.
I would add too that because seems to be, what was the name of the person who asked the question?
Liz.
Liz. And Liz, I'll just put it a little differently in that I have a friend, one of the most deeply spiritual people I know, who's an atheist. So it's not about religion, right? It's about the emanation of a value system that you have. I'm sure Liz has met, she may be one, who are good people with a spiritual grounding, that they give good energy, that they're positive in their viewpoint, that you become a better person through your interaction with them. And that's not a religious thing. So I think that spirituality is, now in my case, it is connected to a higher power, but it doesn't have to be. It's the idea of that, your spiritual center, let's call it values. I think that courage is a terrific value. It's the virtue that makes all virtues possible. I think that honesty leads to trust, and trust is so essential to human relationships. I think of family that impact me, so important. I think of friendships, but what are that person's value system? To me, those things they start to emanate through you in your goodness and how it comes out. And to me, I just call it spirit, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, we call it esprit de corps, the spirit of the team, when we have it whirling around the team as well.
Well, it's interesting, Bill, people ask me, where a lot of my leadership comes from. And I said, it comes from the model of Jesus. And they said, oh, you're a Christian. I said, no, I'm not. Neither was Jesus. Christianity is never mentioned in the Gospels, and it's mentioned 3 or 4 times in the book of Acts. It's negative, those damn Christians. And Jesus had 2 philosophies that I think model what we need to be as servant leaders. He said, love thy neighbor as thyself, and reach out to each other in a really powerful kind of way, and to realize that leadership is really not about you. It's about how you can help other people grow and develop. He wanted people to be the best that they can possibly be.
Yeah, I call that the number 1 law of leadership. It's not about you.
That's right.
It's about the people you're leading.
Thanks to both of you. So here's a big question from Anthony for you, Bill. He's talking about the challenge of leading in a post-pandemic world. What does the post-pandemic leader do to leave a legacy that might not exist? And the question that he has for you, Bill, is what are you doing to distinguish the post-pandemic leader, and what's your first win?
Wow, that's a multi-part question there, Anthony.
It is. There's a lot of parts.
Yeah. That's well, the first is, I think that we should all acknowledge that we haven't figured it out yet, this post-pandemic world. First of all, we don't even know it's post-pandemic, right? I have a friend who got COVID 2 days ago. And so we call it post-pandemic, but this, what is it? Work from home, right? Like, there are some organizations are mandating that, in even some big technology companies, that you got to get back to work, and some big banks are, you got to get back to work. And then a lot of other companies are like, well, we don't need to do that right yet. We figured out how to do it, by work from home. So this whole flexible hybrid, we haven't figured it out yet. I think we're still transitioning. I think that one thing that we can acknowledge is we're not going back to 2019. I think in 2020, when we all moved into the pandemic moment, and I speak for myself too, in 2019, I didn't realize what a crazy train that I was on, traveling all the time, away from my family, going in person to meetings, delivering in-person workshops and such. And then 2020 happened. I was biting my nails. What's going to happen to my business? And I did the pivot like everybody else. And then one day I was like, you know what? This isn't so bad. I get to be with my family for dinner. I get to hit my own pillow at night. So I think we were all on a crazy train and didn't realize how much in 2019. And now the pendulum has moved in the other direction with work from home, when we got people's cats going across their computer screen and for a Zoom session. And we don't want either of those worlds. And we're trying to figure out this post-pandemic moment. And as a leader, what's hard is, prior to this, you could have standard operating procedures and policies in place. Now we're having to make exceptions all the time because of an immune compromised person over here, a person whose children are home because of school over here. And we're having to make individual exceptions, which is really hard for a leader, because you don't want to be seen as providing favoritism to people. In the old days, you could just rely on the policy that everybody had to rely on. So I think that we're still in this transition moment. In my own world, and I don't know that this is a win or not, Anthony, we have decided to make sure that we are staying contemporary with the moment. And we now have some training programs that we're doing in Oculus headsets, so that we can be real time with people, basically together, geographically dispersed at the same time. So it's our way of trying to find new delivery methods. Yes, we do Zoom sessions like this, or we do, if it's Adobe or GoToMeeting or whatever, but we've got these headsets so that we can at least try to keep our training practices contemporary. And by the way, I think that this is where training and development is going to go. I think that you're going to see a lot more done in the virtual space. But you ask a good question, and I don't think that we have a solid answer. But when it comes to leadership, you can still, do right by others, provide and equip them with training, operating out of your value system, make sure that you are serving instead of being served. All those things apply whether you are in a virtual world or in today's real world.
So Bill, can
one of the big positives that I think has come out of the pandemic is Zoom. I'm not going to have to travel as much. People want me to speak, I can Zoom in, but I still think, as you're saying, face-to-face is good. We're talking about in our own company, maybe having everybody come in 1 week a month for the whole week, and we can really be face-to-face and all, because people have really gotten used to working at home and appreciate that, and the work's being done. This year is going to be probably the best year in the history of our company, and so we can't say wow.
Well, so I want to just venture to say that as it relates to wins in the post-pandemic world, Bill, your book was written during the pandemic. And so a big win is these ideas being amplified in the world as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I had no intention of writing a book. In fact, I was intentional about not being productive. I was like, I need to just be in the moment. I as you know, Becky, I took my sons on 50 whitewater kayaking excursions during that time. And I reconnected with my family, and I reconnected with all the spiritual grounding that had made me the person that I am. And then, and in fact, another author reached out to me and wanted to co-author a book, and I graciously declined. And, but then, stuff was stirring inside of me, and new ideas were coming forth. And I'm like, I don't write on spec. I write when the muses and the great higher power and the great spirit in the sky ask me to write, and that's when I write. And this book sort of fell off of me like a piece of fruit. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, so to stay with the idea of amplifying goodness in the world, Alfred had a question. In this world that is increasingly divided politically, there's anger, hatred, threats of violence, talk about a crazy train. That's a crazy train of its own that showed up during the time of the pandemic. So Alfred is wondering, what concepts would you amplify? And we've spoken about some, but what are some other concepts that we want to continue to amplify?
Well, in many ways with Zoom, you can stay in contact with your people even more than you could before, and our son Scott, who's the president of our company now, he had a meeting recently, and he had almost 200 people from around the world on the call, and they didn't have to travel. It didn't cost us anything at all. And yet we are going to have a big company meeting in December in San Diego, where we're going to bring everybody together. So, because people do have that need for face to face, and it's got to figure that combo, I think.
Mm. Yeah, the political stuff is a hard reality, right? And I think that as leaders, and by the way, we have our own, the leader has their own viewpoint on the world, and I think it's to seek bridges, right? I work with a lot of construction companies, and sometimes you find that polarity in there too, just like you find it everywhere else. And we find it in our own homes, the polarity of political discourse. And I think that the important thing is staying in your integrity. When you hear a viewpoint that you don't understand, ask a simple question, and that is, what led you to that? What led to that conclusion? What led to that belief? In other words, get some backstory. Try to understand the person's viewpoint. Situate yourself in their shoes a little bit. But it is and we're going to need leaders to create bridges. We're losing sight of the middle these days, and without a center, the middle can't hold, and we need a center. Because there's we're stretching towards the poles that aren't really they're the viewpoints that are more on the fringes, are starting to impact policy decisions today. And we need people in the middle creating bridges with one another. And I think that that's a call to leadership. In the workplace, it's hard to do. We just, we do something that we used to do a long time ago, and that's to avoid politics and religion in our discussions in the workplace. We do find that sometimes getting people together and not talking about politics, we need kind of a break from it, but if you're going to talk about it, at least try to understand the viewpoint of the person and build bridges.
Well, so Bill,
I think that's what's great about Bill's book, Becky, because if you share it with your people, you could say, okay, what 2 words kind of struck you this week? And why don't you share that and all? And well, that's interesting, because I was thinking about these 2 words, and you could get some really neat dialogue going in there. And because the reason Bill and I think leadership is more simple than people say is that it's about communicating, it's about sharing, it's about being there with people. It's not about you having all the brains.
Well, Ken, you just read my mind, because I was just about to invite our participants to tell us their leadership philosophy in 2 words. I think it would be so fun if everyone would go to the chat right now. Give us your 2 words. We've said quite a few 2-word phrases on this call. We had build bridges just now. I said love freely. If as many of you as possible will give us your 2 words. Maybe we can put some of these 2 words into our follow-up email as we get the recording out. And boy, I love seeing this come in. I'm going to read some out to you. Be kind, be you, listen deeply, stay focused, courageous light, be supportive, be real, listen intentionally. Well, this is love and care. That's 3 words, but I love you, Amy. Care deeply, develop others, by example, choose joy, intentional service. I love these 2 words. And any of you who are typing your 2 words in the chat, what I want to invite you to do when this meeting is over is go ahead and get a piece of paper, get a Sharpie, write it down, take a selfie, go to social media, shout out Ken and Bill, give links to their books. If this meeting today has inspired you, encouraged you, go ahead and take that selfie with the 2 words. Let us see your face. Tag me too. I would love to amplify that. What we want is people to be talking about these positive leadership words. And thank you, Bill, for this powerful concept of leadership in 2 words. Awesome, right? Look at all those. Big love. People are just, yeah, Scott, we do not have a discount code, unfortunately, but what we do have is the ability to give you a free digital version, either the ebook or the Kindle book. But no discount codes today. I'm so sorry. As we start to wrap up, I do want to go back again to let you know some ways that you can share this book with others. And this time it's going to be more smooth, I promise. Look at this. Again, so what we have available today is that if you pre-order the print copy of Bill's book from any online retailer, the first 50 of you to do that can get either a free audiobook code or a free ebook code. There's a link in the chat that Wendy is going to put there again. If you fill out the form and you order today, we'll get you that ebook or audiobook code. Starting tomorrow, you'll be able to leave a review on Amazon. If you've read Leadership 2 Words at a Time, we would welcome and appreciate your review. Wendy's going to give you some ways to stay in touch with Bill. And then again, we have 10 copies of Simple Truths of Leadership in print. For those of you who order the book today, Bill's book, we're going to send out 10 free copies to 10 of you of Simple Truths of Leadership. Bill, I know that you have some parting words that you want to share with us as we wrap up the time today. And thank you so much for all of you joining us. Over 550 participants on today's event.
So, you all saw it, right? What a joy, what a gift to be able to spend time with Ken Blanchard, the greatest living luminary of leadership. I'm so grateful for him to be able to take his time out of his busy schedule with his companies to be able to do this today, to spend time with you. I know you can tell the passion that he has for this topic. It's still shining as bright as it ever has. So thank you first to Ken Blanchard so much for being able to do this today. I also want to let you know that for this book, for the people out there, you wrote this book. It's my session working with leaders like you and working in workshops and working with leaders around the country and around the world. You wrote this book because you informed it with the things that you've taught me. I learned from every leadership session, including today, I learned things. And then I take them and I put them in books and I bring them back to you so that you can then bring them to others. I also want to thank Weaving Influence and their team and Vicki Stanford for her work getting here today as well from the Ken Blanchard companies, and the folks that got us situated, Adrian and the team, Michael, in here in this room here. My two words today are thank you. I am just full of deep, deep gratitude. I'm lucky and blessed to be able to be in the company of all of you. I'm a better person because of it. So thank you all.
It's been fun to be with you, Bill, because I love people who are constantly looking for ways to learn new things. And you're completely open to learning. And that's great. Norman Vincent Peale, who I wrote a book with when he was 86 years old, he said, Blanchard, if you stop learning, lie down and let them throw the dirt on you because you're already dead. And you're very much alive, Bill.
Thank you. You too, buddy. You too.
Thank